Hey the YouTube, this is Gundude73 bringing you guys a knife review today. And we'll be looking at a Hinderer knife, as you can see by the box. And this one in particular is the Hinderer Eklipse. And this is the latest production design from Rick Hinderer. So just some quick specs. The knife has a 3.5-inch blade. Overall, I'm not sure, it's probably around 8.5 inches, maybe 9. It's about the same size as a 3.5-inch XM18. Same steel as other Hinderers at the moment, same thickness, same everything really. They basically just use the same parts for the most part. The differences are the standoffs are different, these screws are different. The pivot's the same though. The clip and the filler tabs are the same. The lock bar stabilizer is the same. The thickness of the tie, the thickness of the G10, the liner, and the thickness of the blade is also the same. But that's pretty much it. Design-wise, it is different. So first of all, when you pick up, I mean, if you've ever handled an XM18, in terms of similarities with the Eklipse definitely has a stronger detent. And for a lot of people, that's a one reason why they don't like the XM. So definitely this has a very much more noticeably stiffer detent. So flipping action on it though is still great. Pops right out, no problem, nice and smooth. I've had mine here a little over a month, but it's still not as smooth as my XM18. My XM here is, just to show you, like when you unlock the blade, it drops. This one doesn't. So that's fine though. I mean, I'm sure it'll smooth in time, no problem. And currently, the Eklipse is featured with this very, very aggressive Tanto blade shape. Very pointy and has a nice little swedge on top. Personally, I like Tantos like this because the other way you'll see them is like this basically angle right here is, I like how obtuse this is. Like if you're looking at this line here and that line there, it's, you know, 150, 140 degrees or something like that if you were to measure like right here. Some Tantos have like 100-degree angles. They're much more steep. This part right here is much steeper. Personally, I don't care for that. I like it. I really like this because you can get like some draw cuts. And one thing that's interesting is if you look at this cursorily, this looks flat, but there's actually a very slight curve. So I'll see if I can show that. You can see that there. The tip isn't really touching the, it's on there flat, but the tip isn't touching the box. You kind of have to roll it a little bit. So there is a little bit of curve there, which is nice for cutting. The tip is a little on the thin side though, I will say. I'm worried that if I were to do something with this knife that I shouldn't, it might break off. It's definitely thinner than a slicer grind XM18. Trust me, in real life it's a big difference, but they say if you read the copy like on Hinderer's website, they say it's a tip that you can pry with. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I don't pry with my knives anyway, so that shouldn't be a concern for people. In terms of price, honestly, I don't really look at aftermarket prices on Hinderers. I mean, personally, I don't feel they're worth the markup. So, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to live near a knife show where Hinderer has a table each year. So, that's where I bought this one, and that's where I bought this one. So, I've paid like the MSRP, the table price, if you will, for both of mine. And I feel that for what you pay, so like $385 for an XM18, and the Eklipses are a bit more, they're $425, but at that price I think it's still a fantastic knife. I've seen some of them sell on the secondary in the 600 range all the way up to the 900 range, and I think that's a bit much personally, but some people really want it and they're going to pay for it, so they're willing to pay the price. They've come in a variety of scale colors, and right now you can't buy secondary market scales because they just don't have enough of them. So like with an XM18, you know, you can buy a whole variety of scale colors. Like even right now, if you were to go to Hinderer's website, they don't offer those yet for the Eclipse, but they will be in the future. So this one though is a black and green scale. It's two-tone. So I like how with these scoops right here you can definitely see that. It's very nice. It's a nice color. I've been moving away from solid black knives just because they're kind of boring in terms of like handle color. So just to have the green thrown in there gives it a nice little bit of pizzazz. So the handle ergonomics on this, I remember when I first saw this design I thought, I'm not so sure about it. It doesn't look very comfortable, whereas the XM18, like, that's one thing about the knife that's great. It has great ergonomics. With the with this one though, it feels great in the hand, I will say. Like this scoop right here, you just lay your thumb there, there's a little bit of jimping on the blade, your index finger is caught behind the flipper tab, and it just feels awesome. And I haven't had a problem with it ergonomically, it just feels great. So that's not been a problem for me at all. And one thing too that I like on the Eclipse versus say the XM18 is the XM has that choil, which for me, my fingers are on the bigger side, so it's basically useless space for me. But on the Eclipse, it just has a little sharpening choil there, so you don't have to worry about the thumb stud getting in the way when you're sharpening. So this though, the Eclipse ends up having a lot more edge, so we can compare the cutting edges here. You can see that the Eclipse has more. They're lined up right now. So definitely something to consider. Personally, I mean, which one would I pick? You know, like if I could only keep one, it's tough. I don't know. If someone were to ask me like, hey, which one should I get first? I would definitely say get the XM18 first. To me, that's just classic Hinderer design, and I feel that every knife enthusiast should, that should be the one you go for first. Just my opinion. So, overall though, I think the Eclipse is a great knife. It's different enough from an XM18 to warrant owning both. And if you've had an XM18, you can really see there's a lot of familiarity with this knife. You know, you have the same build quality. I mean, this knife has this rock solid lockup. The blade is perfectly centered. The fit and finish is amazing. The finish is nice and even. The stonewash is just gorgeous. The handle has bevels all over it, so it's comfortable and there's no rough part to give you bruises, or not bruises, but like blisters. None of that. I mean, this knife is just very, very well executed, as you'd expect from the Rick Hinderer shop. So let's get some size comparisons here. Obviously, I've been comparing it with the XM18, so we'll bring that out. These knives, I mean, because of the camera perspective, the one on the bottom always looks a bit bigger. So like, that's better. But in real life though, these knives are they're like exactly the same size in terms of overall length and thickness and everything. But you can get the XM18 in 4 different blade shapes as of the filming of this video: Spanto, Slicer, Warncliffe, and Skinner, which I saw at the show. Those are nice. I had a chance to buy one, but I got the Eclipse instead. So that's very nice. Another one here. It's also similar in size to the Les George VECP. The VECP looks a lot longer on camera for some reason, but trust me, they are about the same size. Just put this one up here. The perspective makes it makes a big difference. I'm not sure. Maybe because this is further away from the camera, it's better, but the VCP is also a great knife. I just got mine back from warranty work. great experience. The Strider SNG, personally, I'd take the Eklipse over the SNG, especially if they're at the table price. So, great knife, about the same size, but just look at the difference in cutting edge between those two. The Eklipse has quite a bit more. And then the last knife I have out here is the good old Sebenza. Similarly sized, maybe a bit, maybe about the same. And it's a great knife there, the Eklipse. The interesting thing with it though is, as I think anyone watching this video who's into knives will know, is that Rick Hinderer collaborates frequently with production knife companies. So he started out with Gerber, making very inexpensive versions of some of his knives, and then he went on to Kershaw and ZT, who I think does a much better job personally. So I mean, especially the ZT Hinderers, those are really, really nice. I mean, he started out with the 550 and the 551, now discontinued, kind of sad, but then they had the 560 and the 561, but now they have two more. They have the 562, which is basically, it's basically this knife. It's basically a 3.5 inch slicer grind XM18. Slightly different design on the handle, but it has this style blade, but you can get it in M390 in carbon fiber for only around $200. I've seen those go. So an absolute steal of a deal. But the interesting thing though is whenever he's collaborated, he's made the knives different from his own. So if you were to buy the 562 and you have a 3.5 inch XM18, you can have them next to each other and you would say, I can see an appreciable difference between these two. This one's obviously the ZT, this one's obviously the real Hinderer. Or, you know, not real, but it's not like the other one's fake, but the Rick Hinderer knife that he made in his own shop. With this one, the Eklipse, Hinderer has teamed up with ZT to make it's called the ZT 392. And it's basically identical to this knife in terms of the overall shape. The difference is the blade shape is slightly different. So the ZT one has like a drop point blade, and the Hinderer has a tanto. But the ZT has full titanium scales instead of the G10. It has an M390 blade. It has the working finish, which is stonewashed, then sandblasted, then stonewashed again. That's what working finish is. That's mainly seen on custom Hinderers, and sometimes you see it on productions. This one is obviously, this is just the normal stonewash, which I think looks great. But an interesting thing there too is with this new ZT, Hinderer will be supplying the hardware and the pocket clip. So you're buying a ZT knife, but this part, you know, the pocket clip, the filler tab, the pivot screw, these body screws, those are all being made by Rick Hinderer in his shop. They're identical to these. So if you were to buy an Eklipse and you were to buy the ZT 392, those parts are the same. You could interchange them. And once Hinderer starts making scales for these, they will fit on his knives, the Eklipse, and they'll also fit on the ZT knives. And those ZTs will also come, it's a limited edition, so they're not going to be made all the time, but they're going to be made with different blade shapes as time goes on, so I've heard. And the price on those, I think, will be $375. But when you compare it to the aftermarket price on a Hinderer, you know, it's a good deal. I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's kind of weird because you're buying, it would basically be like, you know, if Ferrari teamed up with a mass production car company, right? And then they basically said, oh, here's the Ferrari 458. It's gonna, you know, this like the mass, let's say it's Ford, right? So Ford's gonna make the body look just like a 458, and then Ferrari's gonna put the engine in it, and they're gonna charge less money. So I'm not sure how people would feel about that. That's sort of how I feel. It's like, I would prefer, honestly, if the ZT designs were by Hinderer, but were distinct, instead of being nearly identical. So that's my opinion on that. So if you can't afford, the nice thing though is for anyone who doesn't want to pay the secondary market price on these or isn't able to make it to a show, you can still get a much, I mean, the ZT392 will be very similar to this, and honestly, I think that it'll probably be as good of a knife. So it gets more people into what an actual Hinderer would be like. So that's pretty cool, I have to say. So if you're looking at getting an Eclipse or in the future a 392, honestly, they're great knives, and I really like mine. I've been carrying it solid, so highly recommend it if you can get them, especially at table price. So thanks for watching, and if you guys have any questions about the Eclipse, feel free to leave them in the comments section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.